candidate we have this week is a principal product manager, and they were targeting a role at Amazon. It turns out I get candidates that want to target program managers, product managers, development engineers, although not a ton of development engineers, so let's get more of those. Customer success managers, solutions architects, large range of candidates. Awesome. Heavy concentration in Amazon, though. Seems like I'm getting a bit of a reputation of being the Amazon guy, but I do Microsoft, Google, Facebook, any company that you're interviewing for. I promise you, the Star Fact method that I teach my customers and walk them through how to prepare for their interviews, you will do well regardless of where you're interviewing. In this interview, we were focusing on the leadership principle of customer obsession. And the question that was asked was, tell me about a time that you had to use difficult customer feedback to drive innovation or change in a product. Here's some things I want you to look out for as you watch this candidate work their way through their answer. First, do they clearly communicate their target objective? Second, are they being clear when big company process is getting in the way of being nimble? Are they able to communicate that, hey, I recognize this big company process, but I'm speaking with the voice of the company I was at, and that's how we did things. I didn't have a lot of flexibility in how we did things because that's how it was done. Or is it coming across as, well, I only know how to do big company process stuff and I don't know how to be nimble? Just kind of keep that in mind, because that's one of those things you see again and again is people who have a lot of big company experience and they go to target a startup or a smaller company and they're looking for nimble employees. Sometimes it can come across as you only know how to work in a big company. And finally, I say it every week, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who comes to these videos over and over again, data and metrics. Does this candidate use data and metrics to land their points and do it effectively? Someone targeting principal product manager, I would certainly hope so. Yeah, so it's just kind of bridging off the last kind of impromptu question. Give me an example of a time when you had to use difficult customer feedback to make an improvement in a product or drive innovation, right, to kind of make something better. What was the feedback and what was the course of action that was taken?
So when did I have to use when I got difficult
angry customer feedback, or I'm super upset, or whatever, but difficult customer feedback?
That is the governance space for you. Like when I joined the team and when I took on this role, in fact, I had like a month of transition time between my previous role and coming into this new role, and I had told my manager that, hey, I want to sit in on these customer conversations even before I transitioned to the role, and my then current manager was okay with it. And so I would join these customer conversations and all of them were just so angry all the time.
I'm going to pause right here so that point does not get lost. This is a product manager who, as part of their transition plan out of their existing role, went to their boss and said, hey, I would like to go sit and listen to customer calls in my new group so I can understand what they're about. That is grade A customer obsession product manager stuff. Grade A. Just didn't want that point getting missed.
And I was like, what kind of a space am I getting into? If people are just angry with us all the time. But what I did was I spoke to multiple customers, understood what are the key customer pain points from a data exfiltration standpoint, and why are they blocking Power Platform deals. This got so bad in late 2019 and early 2020 that large enterprises started blocking the use of Power Platform across their organization.
Wow.
And so I spoke to 15 to 20 customers, understood what are their pain points. And like I said, some of the things that they said they wanted was, hey, we want the ability to block connectors. We want the ability to block connector actions within a connector if we don't want to block the entire connector itself. For example, I want my marketing and sales team to be able to read a tweet for sentiment analysis, but I don't want them posting tweets, right? So I collected, what are the pain points that customers are facing, and therefore what are the features that the 20 to 30 features that could potentially go into a roadmap. And after that I surveyed 50 to 60 customers, got their feedback on the high priority items, did usability studies on some of the UI based pain points, and I built a product vision based off of that. And because the customer evidence was so solid and I had used a mix of qualitative as well as quantitative information, I had also looked at telemetry. This is something that clarity was something that the team really needed and the leadership really, really appreciated. And so once I developed the roadmap, the next step was to obviously build these features. And the challenge there was that the challenge was twofold. One part of the challenge was that customers were obviously very angry, and they wanted like 5 or 6 features at a time, which we could not have delivered within a quarter with the resources that we had. And like I said, there were 4 or 5 partner teams. Like each vertical has, a ring-fenced set of developers that work with me on implementing these governance policies on their end. And it is really hard to get them to prioritize things, given that every team has its own set of priorities that they have to weigh this against, right? But again, that's where the customer evidence and what is the impact to each partner team.
Well, before you get to impact, there's a lot to love about this product manager who's just, man, you talk about jumping in with both feet and getting after it immediately. Jumping into a team that clearly had a pace problem in terms of feature development, right? They just weren't getting stuff out fast enough. Okay, that's problem number one. Problem number two, sitting on the calls with all the customers, going through all the feedback and determining, one, the sentiment of the customer, angry, okay, fine. But two, the set of challenges that those customers had and why, right? Great bias for action there. This candidate was very clear on what they were trying to do. I want to come in and be effective day one. So I'm going to spend a month ahead of time to really get deep in the customer, really understand where we're failing as a team without any presuppositions, without any agenda other than delighting the customer and helping the team operate better. I'm going to validate my data. I'm going to talk to customers, and then I'm going to present my case for the features that we need based on the data that I have from these customers, all of their inputs, and what we've seen in the qualitative and quantitative data across our platform. This is a very, very good answer as a starting point for this interview. I'm not going to say this is the gold standard, but this is very good from demonstrating customer obsession, not just in how you tell the story, but also your actions clearly demonstrating you are a high-quality, customer-obsessed product manager. And this took place as jumping into a new team. It wasn't, I did this as part and parcel of my team because I love my customers. This is, I'm going to a new team, and I'm going to love those customers just as much as I love my previous customers. Lots to like here. Walk me through how you prioritized the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the question here about the prioritization of feedback, right? Sometimes product managers will convince themselves it's important to say, I had a backlog of 200 features. Cool story. Hard to deliver against that, right? So what, as a leader, what I want to understand is, how are you prioritizing? Do you understand the difference, or are you weighting them correctly as you take into account the amount of effort as well as the output that's going to come of it, the benefit to the company, the benefit to customers, what's it going to cost, what's it going to get us, right? Are you able to appropriately capture all of that in your decisioning matrix to then communicate, these are the things that we should be working on?
Like I said, I collected a list of like 20 to 30 features, and I created a survey. In the survey, I put it into 4 buckets. Essentially, some of these features pertain to, hey, we want powerful controls, like I said, to block connectors, etc. Another bucket was around, hey, we want strong fundamentals. Like even the one governance feature that you have right now, it does not work on existing apps, for example.
Hold on. Was this bucketing done before you administered the survey or after?
Oh, this was in the survey. I had grouped it into 4 buckets based on features that I gathered through interviews and field feedback, etc. The third bucket was customers were asking for us to integrate better with some of the existing Microsoft governance called Microsoft Information Protection. So Microsoft Information Protection integration with Power Platform was the third bucket. And the fourth was for a more intuitive UI experience, okay? And so when I sent out the survey, it wasn't like, hey, here's a laundry list and, just help me prioritize. But I was like, hey, help us prioritize across these 4 different buckets. And then if you go into each bucket, what are your top features? And then overall, if you look at overall, what would be, and if you had like $100 to spend and you have $25 to spend on each feature, what would be your top 4 features? And so based on that, I got I got guidance on what are the biggest big rocks that are pain points for the customers, as well as within that, how should we prioritize across different features? Does that help?
It does. I love that the candidate was paring down based on a survey. Cool. Get input from your customers. But what's missing here is a little bit of a framework around how much effort is required for XYZ feature, and what do we expect to get out of it for XYZ feature. That's kind of helpful. But the over-reliance, because it's now a couple times they've talked about customer surveys, that can sometimes come across as a big company process versus I just spoke to my customers. So the one kind of potential area for concern here is this candidate falling back to big company process because they have the resources to put together a survey and execute the survey and go to their customer, or are they just picking up the phone and calling customers and talking to them, right? Which is more nimble. Knowing where this candidate was coming from, the company they were coming from, nimbleness is not what they would be known for, at least in the past. So it is a bit more of a big company thing. But I admire the amount of effort that the candidate put into the work to get the feedback from the customers. So now you're going to go on to impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, as I was saying, this is something, impact as in what was the impact after we delivered the features?
Yep. Okay, yep.
Great. So first of all, there were, like I said, there were 20 or 30 Power Platform deals that were blocked. And one of them, like Shell, was blocked for 2 years before I joined. So after we delivered these features, we actually unblocked those 20, 30 deals. Currently, there are no deals that are blocked in Power Apps and Power Automate because of the lack of governance controls anymore. So the point of these governance controls is to actually increase our large tenant usage. And in fact, one of my success metrics is to get 100 customers by end of fiscal year that have over 20K monthly active usage. And right now we've reached 50. And so that is a great start. Yeah.
20K what? User
monthly
licenses, connections?
Monthly active users.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you wanted 100 customers, each of whom had 20K customers, or 100 customers and on average? Well, hold on. So is it 20K total per each of the 100 customers?
Correct. Per customer, 20K. Okay. So yeah, Shell should have more than 20K users, and then it's considered as a large customer. And so
how much of a change was that for to get 100 more? Was that 100x growth? Was that 5% growth? What did that look like?
It was, I think we had like 5 customers when I started with, not even 5, it was under 5 customers. So this was 10x growth so far.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our aspiration is that in the next 6 months, we want to bridge and get to 100. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I think the biggest impact for me as a product manager is that our conversations have completely turned. Like yesterday, I was presenting this to an MPR and in an MPR, and this is what my CVP also alluded. Like the conversations that we used to have 1 year ago the vibe has completely changed. It used to be like customers being really angry with us, and now when we look at the kind of comments that we're getting, it's excitement and it's hope. And so I think there's impact both from a customer happiness and customer satisfaction standpoint. And my NSAT is through the roof, by the way. The aspirational NSAT goal, customer satisfaction goal we have across the org is 120, and my customer NSAT for data loss prevention policies is 165. So we've seen impact in multiple ways.
Well, 10 points to Gryffindor for using the word vibe in an interview answer. I might have heard that before, but it was well used, well placed, well done. As you do these video interviews versus face-to-face, there can sometimes be a lag introduced in just the communication platform. I use Zoom for all the mock interviews that I do. I tried using Teams, ex-Microsoft guy. Unfortunately, they downscale the video quality. It was kind of a pain to use. And at the time I looked at it, they couldn't even do reverse video, which is like, what are we not in 2020 and beyond? So I use Zoom, but you might be using Chime. But something you need to keep in mind is the lag, the delay, not just the network latency that gets introduced, but the fact that the conversation has to be somewhat not full duplex because the microphone is figure out who's talking and what audio to play. And so that can cause some of that halted, choppy back and forth that we had in that last little section there. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing interviews. Sometimes you have to like take a pause and wait for the question to come through or let the person finish speaking, or you end up having that kind of weird, choppy conversation. That's little thing to highlight. Another thing to highlight from this interview is that I loved a lot. This is a great candidate, very thoughtful, very focused, but great use of data to just land the points. Look, understood how many customers they had, demonstrated huge scope and size, 20,000 seats, right? They had less than 5, they moved it to 50. Like, that's a big jump in performance, big jump in growth. That's pretty good scope, right? It's 1 million customers. It's great scope. Just demonstrating all of the things you would want to see from someone who's targeting a principal product manager level role, but also very focused on NSAT is a measure that can tell us how happy our customers are, and I had that number at the ready. And not only was our aspirational goal as an org this, but I overperformed it by 40%. I think the math is right. We're not going to do it on screen, but I think I'm pretty close to right. The point here is this candidate brought the receipts. Outstanding. As I do in all of these, I like to read the assessment I would have read into the room for this candidate had I been on the hiring loop and was involved in the assessment discussion. Customer obsession. Candidate more than effectively demonstrated customer obsession in their answer block. The process was a good one and very customer oriented with a hint of bias for action. The content was very effectively communicated and the outcomes were presented without prompting, shaping the perception of the candidate's ability to communicate at a more senior level. The one missing item from this, which would have helped the answer, was to discuss customer-oriented outcomes rather than company-oriented outcomes. Customer usage of the features versus stats about how good the company was doing. Yeah, no, I'm glad I read that because I missed that point in my little segment before, which is, a little bit less customer orientation on the usage of the product than not. And that certainly would have bolstered this answer a little bit more. I think I just got re-enamored with this candidate and just kind of let that get blind to that. But that is a very valid point that shouldn't be overlooked, which is when you're talking about the success or failure of your products, it's not enough to simply point to the vanity metrics, NSAT, as a way to say, hey, look, we're doing our job. But are customers using the product? Are they logging in with frequency? Is the frequency going up? Are their sessions getting longer? Whatever metrics about customer health, do you have them? Do you measure them? Are you looking at them on the regular? And are you using them to drive decisions? Glad that I read that here because I might have missed that point for the rest of you. The other small point that I want to make sure that doesn't get lost in this is there was a point at which I said, and you were going to talk about impact. Not that is a normal follow-on question for me, but this candidate was effective as a communicator and effective as someone who understands who they're talking to. And they were working through the progression of what do I, as an interview, likely need to hear to understand the quality of how they work. They were logically progressing through it, and it just worked. In this case, it just worked, and it's great. So that's another reason why I talk about the STAR fact format is it's not enough to just do situation, task, action, and results. When you use the FAQ format and you layer that on top of your STAR answers, it provides you the opportunity to drive the conversation in a logical progression, a linear progression to an endpoint that you want. Fill in the gaps, give the interviewer some free follow-on questions if you want, but by having it set up that way, as you structure your answers, it makes it easier for you to overperform as a candidate in your interview.